What would you do if a deadly blizzard led you to two shivering children, alone and abandoned at your doorstep, in the heart of a brutal Chicago snowstorm, the worst in 2 decades? Marcus Sterling, a reclusive billionaire, faced this very question on a night when the wind howled louder than his own buried fears. The storm's icy grip mirrored the walls of isolation he'd built around his heart, a fortress of wealth that kept the world at a safe distance. But as his Rolls-Royce headlights pierced the swirling snow, they illuminated 2 tiny figures huddled against his iron gates, their frail forms trembling in the merciless cold. Their pale faces, framed by matted hair, caught the light, and Marcus's breath hitched, a pang of something unfamiliar stirring deep within him. Welcome to Daily Narrated Stories, where we bring you tales of unexpected connection and transformation. Subscribe now and join us as we aim for 1,000 subscribers. Your support brings these stories to life. The car skidded to a halt, ice crunching beneath the tires, Marcus's breath fogging the frosted windshield as his heart pounded in the stillness of the storm. "Children? Out here?" he muttered, disbelief tightening his chest like a vice. Stepping into the biting wind, his tailored coat offered little protection against the cold that clawed at his skin, each gust a reminder of his own vulnerability, a vulnerability he'd spent years suppressing. The shapes became clearer. 2 identical twin girls, no older than 7, their icy blue eyes wide with fear, their small bodies wrapped in a single, threadbare blanket that offered no warmth against the blizzard's wrath. "My God," Marcus whispered, his voice nearly swallowed by the howling wind as he tore off his coat, draping it over their trembling forms, the cashmere heavy with the scent of his cologne. "What are you doing out here?" Their gazes met his, brimming with silent terror. But they said nothing, their lips blue from the cold, their silence louder than the storm itself. Scooping them into his arms, their fragile weight pressed against his chest, he fought the wind to reach the heavy oak doors of Sterling Manor, each step a battle against the elements, and against the walls he'd built around his heart. His housekeeper, Mrs. Clara Evans, answered the door, her gasp echoing in the grand foyer as she saw the children in his arms. "Mr. Sterling, what in heaven's name?" Her words faltered, her hands flying to her mouth, her gray eyes wide with shock. "They were at the gates," Marcus said, his voice raw, the warmth of the foyer a stark contrast to the storm outside as he carried them inside. Mrs. Evans moved with the efficiency of a mother hen, her gray hair bouncing as she ushered them toward the study, where a fire roared in the marble hearth, its golden light dancing on the walls. "Take them there. I'll fetch blankets and cocoa," she called, her footsteps quick on the hardwood floor as she disappeared down the hall. Marcus set the girls on a velvet chaise near the flames, their small bodies still shivering despite the heat, their delicate features pinched with cold, holding a haunting beauty that stirred something deep within him, a flicker of warmth he hadn't felt since his own childhood, a time before loss had carved its mark. "You're safe now," he murmured, his voice softer than he intended, as if speaking to the ghosts of his past rather than the children before him. Mrs. Evans returned, wrapping them in thick quilts, the scent of lavender clinging to the fabric as she handed them mugs of steaming cocoa, the rich aroma filling the room. Marcus watched, a strange ache blooming in his chest, the crackle of the fire a counterpoint to the storm's fury outside. In that moment, as the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white, something new took root within the walls of Sterling Manor. A fragile seed of connection that Marcus couldn't yet name, but one that would change his solitary existence forever. Morning light crept through the study's tall windows, painting the sleeping twins in soft gold, their identical faces peaceful beneath the quilts. Marcus stood in the doorway, a coffee mug warming his hands, the bitter taste grounding him as his mind churned like the storm that had passed. Mrs. Evans approached, her voice a whisper, her practical shoes silent on the plush carpet. They slept through the night, the poor lambs, completely exhausted. Marcus nodded, unable to voice the tangle of worry and curiosity that had kept him awake, his thoughts a whirlwind of questions with no answers. Any clue who they are? He asked, his voice low, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile peace. Mrs. Evans handed him a crumpled note, the paper worn and jagged, the handwriting desperate. Their names are Sophie and Lily Carter. You've got the means. They're yours now. The words hit like a punch, each letter a weight Marcus hadn't expected. A rustle from the chaise drew his gaze. Sophie, the bolder twin, blinked awake, her eyes wary but steady, a spark of resilience in their icy depths. "Good morning," Marcus said, forcing a smile that felt foreign on his lips. "I'm Sophie," she replied, her voice clear as she nudged her sister. "Lily, wake up. We're still here." Lily stirred, her gaze more guarded, assessing the stranger before her with a quiet intensity that made Marcus feel seen in a way he hadn't been in years. Mrs. Evans stepped in, her warmth a balm to the tension in the room. "Let's get you some breakfast, dears," she said, her smile a beacon as she led them to the kitchen, leaving Marcus to grapple with the note's implications. The dining room, once a sterile showcase of wealth with its crystal chandelier and mahogany paneling, now felt alive with the soft clink of forks and the twins' hesitant movements. Marcus watched from the head of the table, the polished surface reflecting the morning light as Sophie chatted between bites of waffles, her confidence a stark contrast to Lily's quiet intensity. Her words tumbled out like a brook, each syllable a small rebellion against the silence of their ordeal, the scent of maple syrup mingling with the tension in the air. "Our mom died 6 months ago," Sophie said abruptly, her voice matter of fact, though her eyes flickered with a shadow of grief, a shadow Marcus recognized all too well. "Then Nathan said he couldn't keep us." Marcus's fork paused midair, the weight of her words sinking into him like a stone into a still lake. "Nathan?" he asked, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside, his mind racing to connect the name to a face. "Our stepdad," Sophie explained, her small hand clutching her fork a little tighter, her knuckles whitening. "He said you're rich enough to take care of us." The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Nathan, a low-level employee at Sterling Enterprises, had abandoned his stepdaughters at his boss's doorstep, a man he'd only seen in headlines, a man whose wealth made him a target for such desperate acts. Marcus's mind churned, the dining room seeming to shrink as the reality of their abandonment settled over him like a heavy fog. He glanced at Lily, who hadn't touched her food, her eyes fixed on a spot on the table as if it held the answers to her unspoken fears, her silence a weight Marcus felt in his bones. "I should call child services," he muttered, more to himself than to the girls, his voice a low rumble in the quiet room. But Lily's soft voice stopped him cold, her words slicing through the air like a shard of glass. "Are you sending us away again?" Her question, laced with a quiet dread, hung heavy between them, unraveling the control Marcus clung to. Her eyes, so like her sister's yet so different in their depth, bore into him, searching for a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. A memory flashed. Marcus at 10, standing in the rain at his parents' funeral, his uncle's cold hand on his shoulder, whispering promises of stability that never came, the scent of wet earth and sorrow a permanent mark on his soul. He pushed the memory down, focusing on the girls before him, their vulnerability a mirror to his own buried pain, a pain he'd never let himself feel until now. Outside Haven House shelter, Marcus sat in his idling Rolls-Royce, the engines hum a stark contrast to the storm in his mind, the leather seats cold against his back as he gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. The twins had been silent on the drive, their small faces pressed against the windows as Chicago's glittering skyline faded into grittier streets, the city's lights blurring through the frost on the glass, a kaleidoscope of color that seemed to mock the grayness of their situation. "It's just temporary," he told them, the words tasting like ash, each syllable a lie he wished he could believe, the weight of their trust heavy on his shoulders. The shelter's intake was clinical. A weary social worker, Ms. Harper, typed their details into a creaking computer, her fingers moving with mechanical precision, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows on her tired face. "Abandonment isn't uncommon," she said, her tone flat, her eyes barely lifting from the screen, her words a cold reminder of the world's indifference. But leaving them at a stranger's estate? That's new. Sophie answered questions with a brave front, her arm around Lily, who hadn't spoken since they'd left the mansion, her small hand resting on her sister's shoulder, a protective gesture that spoke of a bond forged in shared loss. When it came time to leave, Marcus knelt before them, his suit jacket brushing the scuffed floor, the worn linoleum cold against his knee, the scent of disinfectant sharp in the air. "You'll be safe here," he promised, his voice steady but hollow, a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. But Lily's silent tears and the fleeting grip of her hand on his sleeve shattered his resolve, her fingers trembling, leaving a ghost of warmth on his cuff. A silent plea he couldn't ignore, a plea that echoed in his heart long after he'd walked away. Hours later, still parked outside, Marcus's mind replayed the moment. The way Lily's tears had caught the dim light of the shelter's lobby, the way Sophie's brave facade had faltered for just a second as they turned away, their small figures swallowed by the shelter's stark walls. He ignored a buzzing meeting reminder, the shrill tone cutting through the silence of the car, and called his investigator, Ethan Cole, his voice low and urgent. "Find everything on Nathan Brooks, mailroom at Sterling Enterprises, and his ties to Sophie and Lily Carter," he said, each word a command born of a growing protectiveness he couldn't name, a protectiveness that felt both foreign and inevitable. Ethan's report came swiftly, delivered in a crisp email that Marcus read under the glow of the car's dashboard lights, the words a stark revelation. Nathan had vanished. Apartment cleared, job quit, a one-way ticket to Denver purchased 2 days prior. His disappearance a calculated move that left the twins with no one. Their mother, Elena Carter, had died of pneumonia, leaving no other family, no safety net for the girls who now sat in a cold shelter, waiting for a future Marcus wasn't sure he could give them. The weight of their solitude pressed against him, a heavy fog that clouded his usually sharp mind, each word of the report a stone in his gut. He drove back to Haven House as dusk settled, the sky a bruised purple, his decision made before he fully understood it, a decision born in need he hadn't known he possessed. "I'd like to explore temporary guardianship," he told Ms. Harper, his voice firm despite the uncertainty clawing at him, a beast he couldn't tame, the words of vow to the girls he couldn't leave behind. "That's a big step, Mr. Sterling," she cautioned, her eyebrows lifting slightly, the first sign of emotion she'd shown, her voice a quiet challenge. "I have the resources to give them stability," he countered, his boardroom confidence masking the fear of this uncharted path, a path he was choosing not for himself, but for them. When he saw the twins again, their cautious hope, the way Sophie's shoulders relaxed just a fraction, the way Lily's eyes softened, told him this impulsive choice might be the most significant of his life, a choice that would redefine everything he thought he knew about himself. The west wing of Sterling Manor buzzed with new life, the twins' laughter echoing through halls once silent, a melody that clashed with the manor's usual stillness, the air now filled with the scent of fresh paint and polished wood. "These are your rooms," Marcus said, opening doors to 2 grand suites, their high ceilings and ornate moldings softened by the afternoon light streaming through tall windows, the golden glow a promise of new beginnings. "We can decorate them however you like." Sophie bounced onto a canopied bed, her delight infectious, the springs creaking under her small weight as she giggled, her laughter a bright spark in the dim room, a spark that warmed Marcus in a way he hadn't expected. Lily hesitated, clutching a small bag of their belongings, her knuckles white against the faded fabric, her eyes wide as she took in the space that was now hers. "Both rooms for us?" she asked, her voice a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the dream, her words a quiet plea for reassurance. "Unless you'd rather share," Marcus offered, noting their silent exchange, a glance that held a conversation he couldn't hear, a language of love and survival forged in their shared past. "We always share," Sophie said, her tone firm, her eyes meeting her sister's in a pact that needed no words, a pact Marcus understood without being part of it. He nodded, already planning to turn the second room into a play space, imagining it filled with toys and books, a sanctuary for their healing hearts, a space where they could be children again. Mrs. Evans appeared, her arms full of towels and a maternal warmth Marcus envied. Her presence a steady anchor in the shifting tide of his emotions, the scent of lavender clinging to her as she moved. "New pajamas are on the bed," she told them, her voice soft as she set out the clothes. Soft flannel and pale blue. A small comfort for the girls who'd known so little of it. A gesture that felt like a promise of care. "We'll shop for clothes tomorrow," she added, her smile a beacon of normalcy in the midst of their upheaval. That night, Marcus stood awkwardly at their door, watching Mrs. Evans tuck them in, her hands gentle as she smoothed the blankets over their small forms. The room warm with the glow of a small lamp casting soft shadows on the walls. He felt out of place, a stranger in a scene of domesticity he'd never known. The scent of lavender and the crackle of the fire a stark contrast to the sterile boardrooms he'd mastered. "Good night, Mr. Sterling," Sophie called, her voice polite but tinged with a hope that made his chest ache, a hope he wanted to protect at all costs. "Good night," he replied, leaving the lamp glowing softly, its light a silent promise of safety in the dark, a promise he was determined to keep. Later, as he reviewed financials in his office, the numbers blurring before his tired eyes, a small figure appeared. Lily, tears glistening on her cheeks, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor, her small frame dwarfed by the grandeur of the room. "I dreamed of Mommy," she whispered, her voice trembling, each word a shard of glass in the quiet space, her grief a tangible thing that filled the air. Marcus froze, panic rising like a tide, his heart pounding against his ribs, the weight of her sorrow a burden he didn't know how to bear. He could handle corporate crises, negotiate billion-dollar deals with a steady hand. But this, a child's grief, raw and unfiltered, was a territory he'd never navigated, a territory that terrified him more than any boardroom ever could. "Would you like to sit?" he offered, gesturing to a chair, his voice unsteady as he tried to find footing in this unfamiliar terrain, his hands trembling slightly as he set down his pen. Instead, Lily stood beside him, her fingers brushing his desk, tracing the grain of the wood as if it held the answers to her pain, her touch a quiet plea for connection. Marcus's throat tightened, a memory surging unbidden. Himself at 10, standing in his father's study after the funeral, the room heavy with the scent of leather and cigar smoke. His uncle's voice cold as he said, "You'll manage, boy." "We always do." He'd managed, yes, but at what cost? The loneliness had carved a hollow space in him, one he'd filled with wealth and control. But now, with Lily's words echoing in the quiet, he felt that hollow ache anew, a pain he'd buried deep but never truly escaped. "Mommy said missing someone is like a scratch on your heart. It stings, but it means you remember," Lily said, her voice so soft Marcus had to lean closer here, her words a quiet wisdom that belied her age. "I lost my parents young too," he admitted, the words spilling out, raw and unguarded, a confession he hadn't planned, a confession that felt like a release after years of silence. "Does your heart still hurt?" she asked, her eyes searching his, wide and searching for a truth he wasn't sure he could give, her gaze a mirror to his own buried grief. "Some hurts fade, but never leave," he said, surprised by his honesty, the admission a bridge between their shared sorrow, a bridge he hadn't known he needed. As he walked her back to bed, her small hand warm in his, the hallway dark but for the soft glow of sconces, Sophie sat up, worry etched on her face, her eyes darting between her sister and Marcus, her small body tense with concern. "She's okay," Marcus assured her, his voice steadier now, the act of comforting her grounding him in a way he hadn't expected, a way that felt like a new kind of strength. "Just a dream," he added, smoothing the blanket over Lily, the gesture awkward but sincere. Closing their door, he felt a shift. He'd let a child see his vulnerability, and it didn't break him. Instead, it felt like the first crack in a wall he'd built decades ago, a wall that had kept him safe, but so very alone, a wall that was beginning to crumble under the weight of their shared grief. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in his office, a faded photo of his childhood in hand. Himself at 10, with his parents, before a plane crash stole them away, their smiles frozen in time on a windswept beach, the ocean a shimmering backdrop, the scent of salt and freedom a distant memory. The photo's edges were worn from years of hidden glances, a relic of a life he'd buried beneath layers of control, a life he'd thought he'd never reclaim. Mrs. Evans entered, her voice gentle, her presence a quiet comfort in the storm of his thoughts, the scent of her lavender perfume a familiar anchor. "Thinking of them again?" she asked, her eyes soft with understanding, her voice a balm to the ache in his chest. "And the girls," he admitted, his voice low, the words heavy with a guilt he couldn't name, a guilt that stemmed from his own inability to save his parents, a guilt he now projected onto the twins he was determined to protect. Their mother, Elena, was a pianist with the Chicago Philharmonic, Mrs. Evans said, placing a clipping on his desk. The paper yellowed, but the image clear, a radiant Elena with the twins at a recital, their eyes mirroring hers, their small hands clutching hers as they beamed for the camera, the joy in their faces a stark contrast to the sorrow they now carried. "Lily hums when she thinks no one hears," Marcus noted, wondering if music ran in her veins, a legacy of her mother's talent that might yet bloom, a legacy he wanted to nurture. Sophie appeared, clutching a worn teddy bear, its fur matted from years of love, her small frame dwarfed by the grandeur of the office, her presence a quiet reminder of the life he was building. "Mr. Whiskers said you might be lonely," she said, her voice a mix of innocence and concern, her eyes searching his face for a truth he hadn't admitted even to himself, a truth that made his heart clench with a longing he hadn't known he could feel. Marcus paused, the simple statement catching him off guard. When had anyone last cared about his solitude, seen through the facade of the untouchable billionaire to the man beneath, a man who'd been alone for far too long? "Let's have cocoa while we wait for morning," he suggested, a small smile breaking through, the warmth of the moment a balm to the ache he'd carried for so long, a moment that felt like the beginning of something new. The next day, Marcus sat in his office, the morning light casting long shadows across the room as he reviewed the investigators' latest findings, the air thick with the scent of coffee and old books. Elena Carter had been more than a pianist. She'd been a prodigy, her fingers coaxing magic from the keys until illness stole her strength, forcing her to choose between her career and her daughters, a choice she'd made without hesitation. She'd chosen the twins, pouring her love into them, teaching Lily the first notes of a lullaby on a battered upright piano in their tiny apartment, the notes a thread of love that had survived her passing. The image of Elena, frail but fierce in her love, lingered in Marcus's mind, a haunting parallel to his own mother's devotion. His mother, who'd sung him to sleep with folk songs, her voice a soft thread in the tapestry of his childhood, a thread severed too soon by the crash that had taken her. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on the twins, on the hum of Lily's voice as she played in the next room, her melody a fragile echo of her mother's legacy, a melody that brought a lump to Marcus's throat. Marcus made a mental note to find a piano teacher, someone who could nurture that spark, give Lily a connection to the mother she'd lost, a connection he wanted to preserve at all costs. Spring sunlight warmed the twins' shared room, now a haven of color and comfort. The walls painted a soft lavender at Sophie's insistence, the shelves lined with books and stuffed animals that told the story of their new life, the air filled with the scent of fresh flowers Mrs. Evans had placed on the windowsill. Marcus's once rigid schedule now bent to school runs, art classes, and teddy bear picnics, each moment a thread weaving them closer together, a thread that felt both fragile and unbreakable. He stood in the doorway, watching as Sophie organized a tea party for her dolls, her voice firm as she issued invitations to imaginary guests, her clipboard clutched with the seriousness of while Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, sketching a butterfly with careful strokes, her tongue peeking out in concentration, her focus a quiet beauty that made Marcus's heart swell. The sight filled him with a warmth he hadn't known he could feel, a pride that was both foreign and fierce, a pride that made him want to be better, to be the man they needed him to be. At Whitmore Prep, their teacher, Ms. Laurel, greeted him with a warm smile, her classroom a riot of color with children's artwork pinned to the walls, the scent of crayons and laughter filling the air. Sophie's a born leader, and Lily's a natural in music. She has an incredible ear, she said, her voice bright with pride, her words a validation of the growth Marcus had witnessed. Marcus felt a swell of emotion, a new sensation that caught him off guard, as if his heart had expanded to hold these girls and their triumphs, a heart that had been closed for far too long. Their mother played piano, he explained, his voice softer than he intended, the memory of Elena's clipping a weight in his pocket, a reminder of the legacy he was now part of. Has Lily had lessons? Ms. Laurel asked, her eyes curious. Her question a gentle nudge toward a future Marcus was beginning to imagine. Marcus made a note to arrange them, another step in his evolving role, another promise to keep, a promise that felt like a lifeline. On a weekend yacht trip, his first on the water since his parents' tragedy, Marcus stood at the helm, the wind sharp against his skin, the horizon an endless stretch of blue that both beckoned and repelled him, the scent of the lake a bitter reminder of the day he'd lost everything. Sophie exclaimed, "It's a floating castle," her voice bright as she explored the deck, her sneakers squeaking against the polished wood, her laughter a bright counterpoint to the gulls overhead, her joy a balm to the ache in Marcus's chest. Lily stayed close, watching the crew with cautious fascination, her small hand brushing against the railing as she took in the vastness of the lake, her eyes wide with a mix of wonder and fear. "Why don't you sail?" she asked, her voice soft, her eyes searching his with a perceptiveness that made him feel transparent, her question a quiet challenge to the walls he'd built. "Some things we love carry sad memories," he replied, his candor surprising him, the words a confession he hadn't meant to make, a confession that felt like a release. A memory flashed, his father at the helm of their family yacht, his mother laughing as the wind caught her hair, the day bright with promise until a storm turned it to tragedy, the crash of waves and the scream of the wind a permanent scar on his soul. Marcus pushed the thought down, focusing on the twins, on the way Sophie's eyes sparkled with adventure, on the way Lily's quiet curiosity grounded him in the present, their presence a lifeline in the storm of his memories. When a sudden gust tipped the boat, the deck lurching beneath their feet, Sophie stumbled, her small body leaning too far over the railing, her gasps swallowed by the wind, her arms flailing as she reached for something to hold. Marcus moved with instinctive speed, his heart in his throat as he caught her arm, pulling her back to safety, the terror of loss gripping him like a vice, his breath ragged as he held her close. "I've got you," he whispered, holding her trembling form against him, his arms a shield against the world, the fear of losing her a cold weight in his chest that made his knees weak. Sophie clung to him, her breath ragged, her small hands gripping his shirt as if he were her anchor in a storm far greater than the one on the water, her trust a weight Marcus felt in his bones. That night, as he tucked them in a bed, the room warm with the glow of their lamp, the scent of salt water still clinging to their hair, Sophie murmured, her voice heavy with sleep, "Will you be our new dad?" The question lingered, heavy with possibility, a seed planted in the fertile soil of their shared moments, waiting to grow, a question that kept Marcus awake long into the night, the stars outside a silent witness to the shift in his heart. 5 months in, Marcus reviewed reports in his office, the numbers a blur as his mind drifted to the twins, to the way their laughter had begun to fill the empty spaces of his life, the air thick with the scent of old books and the promise of a future he was beginning to imagine. Mrs. Evans knocked, her expression tight, her usual warmth replaced by a tension that set Marcus on edge, her presence a quiet warning of a storm to come. "Mr. Vincent is here," she announced, her voice low, as if speaking his name might summon a tempest, her hands clasped tightly before her. Vincent Sterling, Marcus's cousin and co-owner of Sterling Enterprises, strode in, his polished shoes clicking with arrogance against the hardwood floor, his presence a sharp intrusion in the sanctuary of Marcus's home, the scent of his cologne sharp and invasive. So, the rumors are true, Vincent sneered, his eyes scanning the room, lingering on a child's drawing pinned to the wall. A bright sun with Sophie's name scrawled beneath it, a splash of color in the otherwise austere space. Marcus Sterling playing father to strays. There's Sophie and Lily, my wards, Marcus said coldly, his voice a steel blade cutting through Vincent's mockery, his protective instinct flaring bright, a fire Vincent couldn't extinguish. Vincent smirked, his smile a predator's grin, all teeth and no warmth, his eyes gleaming with a malice that made Marcus's blood run cold. A midlife crisis, cousin? Most men buy yachts, he said, his voice dripping with condescension, each word a barb meant to wound. Before Marcus could respond, Sophie burst in, waving a graded paper, her face alight with pride, her eyes bright with the joy of her achievement. I got an A. She froze, sensing the tension, her eyes darting between the two men, her small body tensing as if ready to flee, her joy snuffed out by Vincent's presence. This is Vincent, Marcus said gently, his tone softening for her, a shield against Vincent's sharpness, a shield he wished he could make impenetrable. Vincent's smile was hollow as he shook her hand, his grip too firm for a child, his touch a violation of the safety Marcus had worked so hard to build. Quite the little troublemaker, he said, his voice dripping with disdain, his words a poison that made Sophie inch closer to Marcus, seeking the safety of his presence. After Sophie left, her footsteps quick and light as she fled the room, Vincent's tone hardened, his eyes narrowing, his voice a low hiss that filled the room with menace. The board's worried, Marcus. You've missed meetings, all for these distractions. My work's fine. Marcus snapped, his patience fraying, the protective instinct he'd developed for the twins flaring bright, a fire that burned hotter with each of Vincent's words. Not for long, Vincent warned, leaning forward, his voice a venomous whisper, his eyes gleaming with a triumph Marcus refused to let him have. The Berlin deal needs your focus, he added, his words a threat that hung heavy in the air, a threat Marcus knew he couldn't ignore. Later, as Marcus helped the twins with homework, their small desk side by side in the study, the air filled with the scent of pencil shavings and the soft rustle of paper, Lily noticed his distraction, her pencil pausing mid-sketch, her eyes searching his with a perceptiveness that belied her age. Did that man upset you? She asked, her voice soft but piercing, her concern a quiet strength that made Marcus's heart ache. Just business, Marcus assured her, but a family album the twins found later that night, a leather-bound relic from the library, clarified what truly mattered, its pages a testament to the family he'd lost and the one he was building. They sat on the sofa, the album open between them, pages filled with faded photos of Marcus as a boy, his parents' smiles a haunting echo of the family he'd lost, the scent of old paper and memories filling the air. You looked happy, Sophie said, tracing a photo of Marcus on a bicycle, his father's hand steadying him, the image a bittersweet reminder of a time before loss. I was, Marcus replied, his voice thick, the memory of bittersweet ache that mingled with the warmth of the twins' presence, a warmth that made him believe he could be happy again. The twins' 8th birthday arrived, a summer day filled with joy, the garden transformed with fairy lights and a small bouncy castle. A rare indulgence Marcus had agreed to at Sophie's pleading, the air filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the sound of children's laughter. He had planned the party with care, agonizing over meaningful gifts. A sketchbook for Sophie, its leather cover embossed with her initials, a child-sized piano for Lily, its keys gleaming with promise, and matching gold lockets with Elena's photo inside, a tangible link to the mother they'd lost, a link Marcus wanted them to hold onto forever. Sophie traced her locket's engraving, as bold as your mother, her fingers trembling with awe, the gold warm against her skin, while Lily's read, with your mother's melody, a tribute to the music that flowed through her, a music Marcus had come to love. You remembered her, Sophie whispered, tears in her eyes, the words a quiet hymn of gratitude as she threw her arms around him, calling him Uncle Mark, in a tender hug that broke through the last of his defenses, her embrace a warmth that filled the hollow spaces in his heart. That night, as the stars glittered above the garden, their light a soft glow through the window, Lily whispered to Sophie, their voices drifting through the open air, "Can we stay forever?" "I hope so," Sophie replied, her voice a soft prayer, a prayer Marcus overheard as he stood in the hallway, his heart swelling with a truth he hadn't dared name, a truth that anchored him as surely as the stars anchored the night sky, a truth that made him believe in forever. A year had passed since that snowy night, the seasons turning in a quiet rhythm that mirrored the growth of their bond, the air now filled with the scent of spring blooms and the promise of new beginnings. Marcus watched Sophie orchestrate a pretend board meeting with her dolls in the garden, her leadership shining, her clipboard clutched with the seriousness of CEO, her voice firm as she issued orders to her stuffed animals, while Lily sketched under a willow tree, her piano nearby, its notes a soft undercurrent to the afternoon, a melody that echoed Elena's legacy. Her lessons had revealed a prodigious talent, a gift that brought tears to Marcus's eyes when he heard her play. A simple lullaby, but one Elena had taught her, a thread connecting past and present, a thread that made Marcus's heart ache with a mix of joy and sorrow. Marcus now worked from home, balancing business with fatherhood. Despite Vincent's ongoing criticism, his cousin's voice a constant thorn in the boardroom, questioning Marcus's priorities at every turn, his words a poison that Marcus refused to let take root. At a parent-teacher meeting, Ms. Laurel noted Lily's distress over a damaged piano, tying it to her mother's memory, the incident a raw wound that had left Lily trembling in the music room, her small hands clutching the broken instrument as if it were her mother's heart, her tears a silent testament to the loss she carried. "She called you her person who keeps us safe," Ms. Laurel said, the words both warming and wounding Marcus, a reminder of the distance they'd yet to bridge, a distance he was determined to close. On the drive home, the city's lights a blur through the car window, the air filled with the scent of rain and the promise of spring, he decided it was time to make their bond permanent, to give them the security they deserved, the family they needed, a family he wanted to be part of. Over dinner, Marcus unrolled blueprints for the manor's east wing, the paper crinkling under his hands as he spread it across the table, the scent of Mrs. Evans's roast chicken lingering in the air, the warmth of the meal a comfort in the midst of their uncertainty. "I'm renovating this for us," he said, pointing to 3 new suites, each a promise of a future together, each line on the blueprint a vow he intended to keep. "One for each of us, plus a music room for Lily," he added, his voice steady but thick with emotion, the weight of the moment heavy on his shoulders. Sophie studied the plans, her finger tracing the lines with a focus that mirrored Marcus's own, her mind already decorating her space with imaginary colors, her practicality a quiet strength that made Marcus proud. "If this is yours, I'll take this one. Lily needs the corner room for her art light," she said, her voice firm, her decision a testament to her care for her sister. Lily hesitated, her eyes on the music room, her voice a whisper, her hands trembling slightly as she spoke. "Can a music room have Mom's pictures?" "Always," Marcus promised, his voice thick, the image of Elena's portrait already taking shape in his mind, a silent guardian for Lily's music, a guardian he wanted to honor. The renovation moved quickly, the twins delighting in their new spaces. Lily's room with a window seat for painting, its cushions a soft blue she'd chosen herself, the air filled with the scent of her paints, Sophie's with a desk for her business. A miniature version of Marcus's own, complete with a tiny lamp that cast a warm glow, a glow that mirrored the warmth in Marcus's heart. The music room housed a grand piano, Elena's portrait watching over them, her smile a constant presence, a reminder of the love that had brought them here, a love Marcus was determined to preserve. Marcus sat with his lawyers, finalizing permanent guardianship papers, the documents a tangible step toward the family he longed for, the air thick with the scent of ink and the promise of future, when Vincent barged in, tossing photos on the desk. Marcus with the twins at school events, all taken secretly. The images grainy but invasive, a violation that made Marcus's blood boil, the air filled with the scent of betrayal. "You're being watched?" Marcus growled, his voice low, a storm brewing in his chest, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "The board doubts your commitment." Vincent sneered, his eyes cold, his smile ablaze, his words a poison that Marcus refused to let take root. "And Nathan Brooks is back, petitioning for custody," he added, his voice a venomous whisper, his eyes gleaming with a triumph Marcus was determined to deny him. The news hit like a storm. Nathan, after abandoning the twins, now wanted them back, a threat that made Marcus's heart race with fear, a fear he hadn't felt since the night he'd found them in the snow. The room seemed to tilt, the air thick with the scent of betrayal, as Marcus grappled with the threat to the family he'd built, a family he'd come to love more than anything. That evening, as the twins picked paint swatches, their laughter a bright counterpoint to the darkness of Vincent's words, the air filled with the scent of fresh paint and the promise of a new beginning. Marcus called Ethan, his voice a quiet command, his resolve a steel thread in the chaos. "Dig into Nathan's recent moves. Everything," he said, his determination a fire that burned brighter with each passing moment, a fire Vincent couldn't extinguish. The custody hearing loomed in a stark Chicago courtroom, the air heavy with the scent of old wood and tension, the walls a cold gray that seemed to press in on Marcus as he sat, flanked by his legal team, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. He faced Nathan across the aisle, the man thinner than in the photos, his new suit ill-fitting, his eyes darting nervously as he whispered to his lawyer, his presence a threat Marcus couldn't ignore. Nathan's lawyer painted him as a grieving man seeking redemption, his voice smooth as he outlined Nathan's supposed transformation, his words a carefully crafted lie that made Marcus's blood boil. But Marcus's attorney highlighted the twins' stability and Nathan's abandonment. Each word a brick in the wall Marcus was building to protect them, each argument a shield against the threat Nathan posed. Outside, the lawyer warned, his voice grim, the weight of his words a stone in Marcus's gut. "The law favors biological ties. It won't be easy," his words a reminder of the battle ahead, a battle Marcus was determined to win. That night, in the music room, Lily's piano notes filled the air, each melody a dagger in Marcus's heart at the thought of losing them. The sweet notes of a lullaby Elena had taught her a haunting reminder of what was at stake, the air filled with the scent of polished wood and the weight of their shared history. "You seem sad," Sophie said, her perceptiveness sharp, her eyes searching his as she set down her book, a fairy tale they'd been reading together, her concern a quiet strength that made Marcus's heart ache. "Is it about us?" Lily added, setting down her sheet music, her hands trembling slightly as she sensed the shift in Marcus's mood, her voice a whisper that cut through the silence. Marcus sighed, the weight of the day heavy on his shoulders, the air thick with the scent of their shared fears. "Yes, but I'll keep us together. I promise," he said, his voice a vow as he admitted his love, the words a lifeline in the storm. As the twins each took his hand, their small fingers warm against his, their trust a weight he felt in his bones. "We know," Sophie said softly, her voice a quiet anchor, a promise of trust that held them together, a promise that gave Marcus the strength to fight. The custody battle stretched over months, each hearing a test of Marcus's resolve, the courtroom a battlefield where every word was a weapon, every glance a challenge, the air thick with the scent of tension and the weight of their future. At an emergency board meeting, Vincent accused him of neglecting the company, displaying a headline about the case, the bold letters a stark accusation. "Billionaire's custody battle shakes, Sterling Enterprises." The words a poison that made Marcus's blood boil. "This spectacle is tanking our stock," Vincent hissed, his voice a venomous whisper, his eyes gleaming with a triumph Marcus refused to let him have, his presence a storm Marcus was determined to weather. Marcus held firm, his voice steel, his resolve a fire that burned brighter with each of Vincent's words. "My family isn't your concern," he said, his words a shield against Vincent's attacks, a shield he'd built for the twins he loved. Later, Ethan revealed the truth. Vincent had paid Nathan $100,000 to fight for custody, orchestrating his reformation, to remove the twins as Marcus's heirs, a scheme as cold as the blizzard that had brought them together, a scheme that made Marcus's blood run cold with rage. Furious, Marcus planned his counterattack, ensuring Vincent's scheme would unravel in court, his determination a fire that burned brighter with each betrayal, a fire that would protect the family he'd built. 2 years after that snowy night, Marcus stood with the twins at Elena's grave, a new headstone gleaming in the soft spring light. Elena Carter, beloved mother, pianist, eternal light, the polished granite a testament to the love Marcus wanted to honor, the air filled with the scent of wet earth and the promise of renewal. Mom loved spring rain, Lily said, placing daisies on the stone, the petals bright against the gray granite, her voice soft with a love that time couldn't erase. She'd be happy now, Sophie added, her hand on her sister's shoulder, a protective gesture that spoke of their unbreakable bond, a bond Marcus had come to admire and cherish. The previous day's hearing had exposed Vincent's payments, and Nathan confessed, his voice breaking, tears streaming down his face as the truth poured out. I never wanted them back. They're better with you. His confession a final nail in the coffin of his claim, a confession that sealed their fate. The judge dismissed Nathan's petition, and Vincent faced board removal, his empire crumbling under the weight of his own deceit, the air filled with the scent of justice and the promise of a future free from a shadow. Lily placed a letter by the flowers, her handwriting small and careful on the envelope, the paper crinkling softly as she set it down. I wrote Mom about my piano recital and our new home, she said, her voice soft, the words a quiet offering to the mother who watched over them, a mother Marcus had come to respect through the twins' love. And about you, Sophie added, her eyes meeting Marcus's, steady and sure, her voice a quiet testament to the family they'd become. That you're our safe place, she said, her words a balm to the wounds of the past, a balm that made Marcus's heart swell with a love he'd never thought he'd know. Marcus paused, the quiet moment more powerful than any legal win, a testament to the family they'd become, a family forged in the crucible of loss and love. 3 years to the day, another snowstorm blanketed Sterling Manor, the flakes drifting down in the fading light, a mirror to the night that had changed everything, the air filled with the scent of snow and the promise of a new beginning. The adoption was hours away. Sophie and Lily would become Sterlings, their names a permanent mark of their bond, a bond Marcus had fought for with every fiber of his being. Mrs. Evans, her eyes misty, announced, "The car's ready, sir," her voice soft with emotion, her usual formality softened by the weight of the day, the air filled with the scent of her lavender perfume and the promise of a future they'd built together. Marcus joined the twins in the East Wing, their rooms a testament to their journey. Photos of school plays, picnics, and snowy days lining the halls, a visual history of their love, the air filled with the scent of fresh paint and the echoes of their laughter. Elena's portrait hung in the music room, her smile a constant presence, a guardian of their shared memories, a reminder of the love that had brought them here. The twins emerged in matching emerald dresses, their excitement palpable, their eyes bright with a hope that mirrored Marcus's own, the air filled with the scent of their excitement and the promise of a new chapter. "Is it really happening?" Lily asked, her voice trembling with disbelief, her hands smoothing the fabric of her dress, her eyes searching Marcus's for confirmation. Marcus knelt, a habit born of countless moments of connection, his voice steady as he spoke. "Yes, but you've been my daughters for a long time," he said, the word a vow that held them together, a vow that had been true long before the papers made it official. At the courthouse, the judge declared, "Sophie and Lily Carter are now Sophie and Lily Sterling." Her voice warm in the cold room, the words a final seal on their family, the air filled with the scent of old wood and the sound of applause from the small audience. Mrs. Evans, Marcus's attorney, the twins' favorite teacher, and a few close friends, their joy a testament to the family they'd become. Outside, the twins danced in the snow, calling, "Dad, join us." Their voices bright with joy, the word Dad a natural flow from their lips after months of tentative testing. Marcus joined them, Lily's hand in his, the cold forgotten in the warmth of their laughter, the air filled with the scent of snow and the promise of a future they'd built together. Mom would approve, Lily whispered, her voice a quiet hymn, her words a testament to the love that bound them all. Back home, a cozy celebration unfolded. Homemade cake, laughter, and gifts. The room filled with the scent of vanilla and the sound of their joy, the air warm with the promise of a new beginning. Later, at the window where he'd watched the storm that first night, Marcus felt the twins beside him, their presence a quiet comfort, the air filled with the scent of snow and the weight of their shared history. "It's like that night," Sophie said, her voice soft, the memory a shared thread between them, a thread that had woven them into a family. "When we found you," Lily added, her hand slipping into his, her touch a reminder of their journey, a journey that had begun in a storm and led them here. Marcus handed them each a box, gold rings with a sterling crest, heirlooms from his mother, their weight a symbol of their place in his family, the air filled with the scent of their excitement and the promise of a legacy they'd carry forward. "These are for daughters," he said, his voice thick with emotion, the words a vow that held them together. "Did you know we'd stay that first night?" Sophie asked, her eyes searching his, the question a bridge to their past, a bridge Marcus crossed with a smile. "No," he admitted, "but the best things find us when they're meant to." His words a reflection on the journey that had brought them here, a journey of love and loss, of fear and hope, of a family forged in the unlikeliest of places. As he tucked them into their now separate rooms, the connecting door ajar, the air filled with the scent of their shared history and the promise of a future they'd build together, Marcus knew their journey, begun in a storm, had led to a family forged in love, a family that was perfectly, wonderfully their own. Reflect on a time when an unexpected moment changed your life. Share your story in the comments below. Daily Narrated Stories brings you tales like these to inspire and uplift, but we need your help to keep going. Subscribe now and help us reach 1,000 subscribers this week. Don't miss your chance to be part of our growing family of story lovers.